Okay, I'm making another video today because we are have to be aware of what the weapons are. The weapons that they're using against us are going to be satellite weapons, electronic devices, laptops, computers. But I want to talk about HARP. I've been stressing HARP, HAARP, and I'm going to get to that. I'm going to start showing you some of the clips from professional experts who know about HARP and what it does. Okay, stand by. Okay, I'm just using a laptop here. I'm not using a home computer, just a quick laptop to gather some information. So you go into ebook there, and you go into your browser and you type in, HARP. Okay, enter. And what do you come up with? Okay, you come up with. Let's take a look. We're going to take a look at Wikipedia. What is HARP? It says HARP stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Okay. It says here that if you look into there, HARP direct shear from live CDV packaged by the name of the project HARP. Okay. It's ionospheric heater. Okay. So those of you that feel very hot during the summertime and your skin's burned, well, you know why. High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, called HARP, was affiliated as an ionospheric research program jointly funded by the U.S. Air Force, okay, the U.S. Navy, the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and Defense Advanced Research Project, called DARPA. It was designed and built by the Bay Advanced Technologies. There you go again. Okay, this is a private company, folks. People invest their money in terrorism. Bay Advanced Technology created it. Okay. BAAT. Its original purpose was to analyze the ionospheric and investigate the potential for developing ionospheric enhancement technology for radio communications and surveillance. As a university facility, HARP is high-powered frequency transmitter used for study of ionosphere. Okay. The most prominent instrument at HARP as an ionospheric research instrument is known as a high-power radio frequency transmitter facility operating in the high-frequency HF band. The IRI is used to temporarily excite and limit. I'm going to say it again. The IRI is used temporarily to excite and limited area as ionosphere. Other instruments such as the VHF and the UHF radar is fluxgate. Magnetometer is disguised node, ionospheric sounding device, and induction magnetometer are used to study the physical process that occur in the excited region. Work on HARP facility began in 1993. Okay, 1993. The current working hour was completed in 2007. Its prime contractor was Bay Systems Advanced Technology. As 2008, HARP has incurred around 250 billion in tax-funded construction and operating costs. In May 2014, okay, it was announced that the HARP program would be permanently shut down later in the year. After discussion between the parties, ownership of the facility and its equipment was transferred to the University of Alaska Fairbanks in August 2015. HARP is a target of conspiracy theorists who claim that it is capable of weaponizing weather. Commentators and scientists say that the advocates of the theory are uniformed as claims made fall with outside the abilities of the facility, if not the scope of natural science. Okay? There you go. Now, okay, if you look at this here, okay, look at some of the pictures. I've been telling you about this weapon here, but look at some of the pictures, guys. Okay, look at the devastating pictures on this weapon. Okay, look what it does. There's the antennas. I mean, these antennas are built now all over each state, folks, to create disasters for us. Okay? I mean, it is crazy, folks, that we're going through this process of these weapons. They exist. It's used to cause natural disasters, folks. Okay. All right. Now, as you look through HARP, you're familiar with HARP. Uh, HARP is manipulated in many ways, folks. You see some of the pictures that we got here? If you look at some of the skies, this is what happens to the HARP frequency. It's radio frequency causes the radio frequency of waves in our clouds, okay, to enhance the weather. Okay, our clouds are normally marshmallow, kind of pillow-like. Okay, these antennas are used to manipulate us, the behavior, our movement in our bodies, muscle tremors, and everything, folks. Okay, there you go, folks. Look at that. Okay, it manipulates the weather. All right. Now, when you're going back into HARP, we're going to look at a couple of videos here that I want to share with you on YouTube about HARP. You go into YouTube. And you're going to type in, on YouTube, you're going to type in HARP. You're going to type in HARP. HARP scientist. HARP scientist, okay? And you'll find a couple videos here. There's a couple of videos, but there's one guy that worked for DARPA who is an expert on all this, okay? We know that this is going on, okay? DARPA is another agency that uses this to manipulate the ozone layer in our Earth, in our environment. Okay. Let's see here. It's HARP scientist. I'm gonna find it here for you here. Okay, so we come down here. Okay, so we're going to come in here. I've got some more intel on the HARP system and the organizations, and I'm going to let you see here just a minute who the scientists were for DARPA back in the days. Okay, this is my list here, but there were some scientists here that I want to cover here that worked for DARPA, and here it is, Mr. Paul Batchel. Look right there. So we're going to look at Mr. Paul Batchel and see what he has for DARPA. Paul Batchel. Let's see what we got from Mr. Paul Batchel. Okay. Besides Paul Batchel, I want you to focus on the real individual here. And it says here, HARP, a Mind Control by Dr. Nick Begich. Technology is humanity's double-edged sword. And we're going to get into him because this is a real scientist. Okay, this guy is pretty good. But I'm going to let you hear the evidence here and what he's got to say. He calls it Prison Planet by Dr. Nick Begich. He's got a lot of information, folks. HARP and Mind Control by Dr. Nick Begich. Technology is humanity's double-edged sword. This is Dr. Nick Begich. His father worked for Congress, and so did his, I think, brother.
The system that we're talking about is going to be the HARP system, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, operating up here in Alaska. And if you also think about, and most people remember this from even high school science, but the magnetic field lines that come from the South Pole stretching around and then intersecting at the North Pole and surrounding the planet. These magnetic field lines are very much similar to what you would see on a bar magnet illustration in your basic science books, or in a motor. If you think about the Earth spinning and actually creating a dynamo, a motor, and these magnetic field lines being one of the outproducts of that, in conjunction with interaction with the solar wind, you get things like the magnetosphere and the magnetotail, which comes back behind sort of the way the downwind of the planet, if you will, from the sun itself.
He's got
In any
over
case,
a lot
this
of views.
dynamic of the Earth's,
121 views.
the Earth's motion, solar radiation, the interplay of all of the various factors of the planet are looked at in separate, independent, individual science, not really looked at in integrated
1.1
science.
like,
Not all those
1.1
systems
thousand
work
likes and
together
44
when
hates.
they
You can imagine who the hates
create
are.
an outcomes. But as we look at HAARP, the primary idea is to affect this ionosphere and then affect these magnetic field lines. And ideally, you want to affect those magnetic field lines at the closest place to which they intersect the planet, which happens to be at the poles. And in the case of where Alaska sits on a map, very near the poles, the furthest northern territory in the United States, where you could locate a facility on U.S. territory that you could inject energy directly into the magnetic field lines of the Earth. We're going to be talking about an area above the Earth's surface, about 30 miles above the Earth's surface, moving out several hundred miles beyond that, the ionosphere. It's a highly charged area. It filters out cosmic radiation, various particle streams. That without it would make life impossible on the planet. Now, one of the ideas.
If you look here also, it
behind
says
HAARP, which
this
is an
video
array
contains
or
controversial
field
subject
of
matter and is
antenna
being shared for
here in
educational
Alaska,
purposes.
180 antennae
Okay?
in the array today. It
Let's see what
fires
it
or
says more here.
concentrates, focuses radio frequency energy that it literally sends up
Okay.
into a relatively narrow beam, affecting the magnetic field lines in one instance, where the energy is normally naturally flowing from the South Pole, coming up, arcing high above the equator, then coming back into the North Pole, with the energy flowing from south to north. What happens is those magnetic field lines act as waveguides. So you can pump energy out of HAARP, focus it on those magnetic field lines, and then it screws itself, if you would be able to see it, with like a corkscrewing motion, where the energy is actually moving now from north to south, using the magnetic field lines as a waveguide. Now, what would that do, essentially? If you had, for instance, an intercontinental ballistic missile that gets fired from China to the U.S., and it traverses those magnetic field lines with those charged particles racing along them, using them as waveguides, it would create a virtual shield around the planet. So any of those incoming objects, intercontinental ballistic missiles, any satellites that happen to traverse those areas, or any other electronically sensitive equipment would be destroyed almost instantly. And so when you think about HAARP, there's a couple of ways to look at it. One is manipulation of those field lines, those magnetic field lines, which actually have been mapped. And if you look at some of the ways those are mapped, is barium particles are injected into the upper atmosphere and lower ionosphere using barium-laden rockets. What those create when you inject radio frequency energy is air glow, where you get this sort of light-up effect. So you can actually see this corkscrewing motion around those magnetic field lines.
Okay, I'm going to speed this up a little bit. Because he talks more about the
problems, and you're able to keep these things aloft for great deals of time. Part of the HAARP idea was if you could focus radio frequency energy, you could even concentrate it and send energy directly to these same kind of low-orbiting space platforms, as an example. One of the other thoughts with HAARP systems are the actual heating of the ionosphere. And when it's heated, because this energy is concentrated, what happens is the ionosphere then lifts up, moves out several hundred kilometers. Now imagine if you're a satellite drifting through space where there's no atmosphere, and all of a sudden you hit a column of atmosphere. What will happen is it creates friction, and that friction causes that satellite to burn up, and all of a sudden you got a satellite down. When you turn the instrument off, everything goes back to normal, and you have plausible deniability on a satellite going. For every ship they build, we think about it because in and everything went back to normal. But think about this now. I mean, think about it as a practical matter. The earth is turning, you make a hole, everything's moving, eventually it gets filled in. We worked through at the time was the Mankind Research Association, operated out of the, as you hear and you're having a conversation with your friend, then you block out all that background, the artificial from their own. Now think about that in the 21st century. If you can create a complete memory set, one of the stated goals of Air Force planners, you can't get from a lab to save their, I mean, he's come to my house all the time, talk to my dad. The guy could barely sit on a bar stool and he was Speaker of the House. You know, those were the days when you got stopped by the police for drunk driving and they said, hey, drive on home and sleep it off. You know, it was a different world in a different era.
Okay.
But
So
Carl Albert was not in a position at that time to step into the President of the United States. What I think would have happened had Boggs lived, Carl Albert would have stepped down, Boggs would have stepped up, they would have got rid of Agnew and Nixon at the same time, and the third in line to be president would have been, and that would have been Hale Boggs. And the
So
whole
I
game
mean,
would have
here
changed
is
in
a
this
whole
country.
bunch
And
of
personal freedom and liberty would have been
Nick
restored then,
Begich
instead
has a
of
lot
going into
of people. His
disrepair
dad worked for the.
even
He was a
further
former U.S.
now.
representative,
Dad brought Boggs to Alaska to campaign.
so he was a pretty good
Dad
influence
had that
in the
campaign
media.
in the bag.
But if you
He
look,
brought him here to show him,
he's
to
got a
talk
lot
about
of
the same
information,
issues,
folks.
many of the same issues that we
This
talked
is
about
Dr. Nick Begich.
over this video.
Okay.
The idea that Alaska has this tremendous potential for the United States that ought to be realized. This was right before the native land claims,
All
the
right.
biggest settlement in indigenous history in the United States. As a freshman congressman, my dad got passed a 44 million acre land transfer.
This
to
guy's got a
indigenous
lot
people
of
in
information. He's a
Packwood.
doctor.
Mineral rights, oil and gas rights, energy rights, timber, surface estate, water rights, everything intact.
If I can find,
And
let me
they
find
moved
more
that over
information
along with just
on
under
Paul
a bit.
Batcho. Okay, so you got one. That's Dr. Nick Begich. Let's look at Dr. Paul Batcho. Paul Batcho. And Dr. Paul Batcho. Here you go. This is what I was talking about. Okay, he's got a lot. He's with a lot of information. Paul Batcho is with Targeted Justice. Paul Batcho, he's got a PhD. He's talked with Richard Lighthouse. Okay, he's a senior scientist for where? For DARPA. Okay. Senior DARPA scientist warns about widespread or lethal attacks. Okay, there you are. Okay, so I mean, you pretty much have a lot of information, a lot of expert witnesses who have worked for the government at some point in time. And here's his headlines here. Senior DARPA scientist warns of widespread or lethal attacks upon the public coming from microwave towers. Okay, former DARPA senior scientist Dr. Paul Batcho asserts that cell phone towers pose an international and immediate lethal threat against general public of the United States. Okay. So, I mean, this is a lot of intel, folks. I mean, I'm just trying to give you information here. And we know that HAARP is a weapon. I mean, it's a weapon used against us. Okay. And it would mess with the inertia of any object or any living human being, folks. There's no doubt. Powerful weapon. Powerful weapon, folks. Okay? Thank you.